Hi. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the people and the plans and compromises that were suggested during the Constitutional Convention. If you look at your worksheet on the front side, it'll discuss all of the plans in a graphic. But then if you flip it over, you will see another chart that will have a place for you to put some information down about the people that were instrumental in the Constitutional Convention. So why don't you have it on the side where the people are? Because the first two people we're going to talk a little bit about the people that were instrumental in adopting the Constitution that we have today. The first one, we think we know a lot about him, but it is George Washington. Remember that he was elected president of the Constitutional Convention unanimously, and eventually he's going to support what is called the Virginia Plan. He was a man from Virginia, and he did know James Madison very, very well, but he believed that our government needed to be stronger at the national level than the states. But he never formally said it during the convention. What he would do is that he would quietly exert his influence behind the scenes. He stayed away from Mount Vernon from May to September. And you have to remember that he was a farmer. And so that was a huge sacrifice for him in terms of his own personal enterprises. He was in charge of the 55 delegates. He makes the number 56. And again, he was a quiet man that did not necessarily speak a lot during the convention, but his influence was felt behind the scenes. Another quite famous individual, of course, is Benjamin Franklin. He was active in the debates, but quiet during the convention. And what that means is, like George Washington, he understood the influence that he had. And so during the debates and compromises that were going on, that's when he chose to exert his influence. Okay? Now, a name that you might not be familiar with, and you might think that his his name is kind of unusual, but Governor Morris was a very eloquent speaker. He is the one that wrote the final draft. So all of the words that you read as you're doing your Constitutional Convention test, you are reading Governor Morris's words. The final words and the phraseology are the result of this man. So when we say, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, we are reading his words. He is as much the author of the Constitution as Thomas Jefferson was of the Declaration of Independence. So we owe a debt of gratitude to this man. All right, now for the next screen is we have James Madison. James Madison is considered the father of the Constitution. He is the one that created and brought the Virginia Plan to the convention to discuss. He believed in a strong national government. Now, when we have class next week, we will be looking at the video links that are here. Right now, my goal is just simply for you to get the information down about the different plans. So flip your paper over. What was the Virginia Plan? Well, the Virginia Plan was a plan that is often called the large state plan. And that is because the states that would have the most power were the ones that had the largest population. They believed in a strong national legislature where the lower chamber was chosen by the people and the upper chamber was chosen by the lower chamber. So the more people that you had, the more power that you had. And of course, the small states had no time for this. Another thing is that they did believe in an executive branch. The executive branch would be chosen from the legislature again, and the judiciary would be chosen by the legislature. So as you can see kind of by my graphics, the people would choose the House of Representatives. The state legislature, for example, in Iowa, Des Moines, would choose the Senate. These two would choose the president, and the president would then choose the national judiciary, whoops, this is wrong, would be chosen by the legislature as well. Now, So that means that the power was really held in the hands of, the legislative body, and which is in the hands of the large states population. And that did not go over well, okay? But the foundation of this government you can see in our government today. We have a bicameral legislature. The House is chosen by the people, but now the Senate is also chosen by the people. But the people also choose our president. So it's not all the way like the Virginia plan. But it did become the foundation of our Constitution. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, wrote it. But remember, he was incredibly shy, so he would not speak. A man by the name of Edmund Randolph is the one that actually did the introductions. Well, when this hit the floor, the debating was intense. And eventually, the smaller states came forward with their plan. And that was proposed by a man by the name of William Patterson. William Patterson was the leader of the small states, and it became known as the New Jersey Plan because New Jersey is one of the smaller states. And what he did is William Patterson just basically sat down and tried to revise the Articles of Confederation. They kept the unicameral Congress, as you can see in your on your notes, and they wanted the weak national executive to be elected by Congress. So notice they wanted a parliamentary democracy. They did agree to that. But they agreed that the national judiciary would be appointed by the Senate, by the executive. So the Virginia plan was the plan for the small states, okay? They wanted an oligarchy, okay? They wanted more than one person to be in charge of that executive branch. And the national judiciary would be appointed by the executive, and the unicameral legislature, everybody would have one vote. So here are my goofy pictures again. The people would vote for one person who would eventually vote for the executive branch. Needless to say, this caused tremendous upheaval and really didn't gain a lot of favor. Many of the small states walked out on the Virginia plan, and many of the large states walked out on the New Jersey plan, but they also knew enough not to walk out so far because of the quorum thing. So the last thing we're going to talk about is the man by the name of Roger Sherman. Roger Sherman is the man that I think can take credit for saving our country. He offered what is now known as the Great Compromise, the Connecticut Compromise, which is the foundation of our government today. Without this compromise, I doubt that we would have survived for very long. Our government would have fallen apart, and probably England or France would have swooped in. So what was the Connecticut Compromise? Well, the Connecticut Compromise was the combination of two things. As I said, it was proposed by Roger Sherman, and it said that the Congress would be bicameral. The lower chamber would be based on population, as you guys can see here. Sorry, there's a lot of words on here, and I'm not quite sure why it switched. But the lower would be based on population, and the upper chamber would be based on equality, meaning that every state would get 2 senators, and that is as a compromise for the small states. Okay. One of the things that is huge is that they believed that all bills dealing with money, revenue, taxes going up would start in the House. Because if we didn't like what they did with our taxes, they're only going to be there for 2 years and we would get rid of them. When people heard this compromise, there was this silence in the room because they realized the large states would have the advantages in the House, such as California, Texas, New York, Pennsylvania, and Florida. But small states would be protected in the Senate. There was a collective hush among our congressmen at that time at the convention. And if you remember, on the very first day we talked about controversies, they realized that the Connecticut Compromise would solve the first of those controversies. But it wasn't long before they realized, wait a minute, if everything is going to be based on population, how do we count the slaves? Well, we will save for another day. All right, thanks, and we will see you guys later.